Hello and happy Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for tuning in to Morning JOX. Conrad Van Order and Molly Robinson with you today. It's kind of fun if you tune into this show every morning. You never know who you're going to get this time of year. So we're making it work here with everybody trying to squeeze in their time off. So I was off yesterday. Now Damien gets his turn, taking a couple of days off here ahead of the Christmas holidays. But appreciate all of you for tuning in here this morning. We've got a lot to get to. Some big news, some big developments in the transfer portal for both Alabama and Auburn. Some good news for both of those teams yesterday. We had Auburn basketball last night. They looked good yet again. We had maybe the first bowl game that a lot of people really kind of were paying attention to, with West Virginia and Memphis going on last night. And of course, we are only 2 days away now from the start of the college football playoff as well, Molly. So we have a lot of things to look forward to here today in the world of sport. It's a good day here coming up on the holiday season.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. And to the point about the bowl last night, that was really the first, I guess, bowl that I've actually sat and watched the entire thing. Because, over the weekend, I watched the Army-Navy game. But last night, that was a lot of fun. I loved the ending. I had no idea what was going on. Just kind of felt like a constant back and forth. But I just realized this is the first time that we've ever done Morning JOX. I've done Morning JOX. I've always been with Damien because you've been gone.
That's right. Well, it's kind of like a mini three-man front.
A little bit.
From 6 to 7. A little bit like that.
A morning edition of three-man front.
That's absolutely right, Molly. But yeah, like you said, the bowl game last night, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But yeah, that game got a little drunk there at the end, but that was a fun kind of way to kick off part of the bowl season here on a Tuesday night. But first, we go to the transfer portal, where the big news yesterday was actually more so about, I mean, I guess technically guys coming out of the portal, but for both Alabama and Auburn yesterday was more so about guys on the defensive side of the ball that were planning to enter the portal that have now ultimately changed their minds and decided to stay put here in the state of Alabama. And so the big one last night was you had Amaris Williams, the five-star edge rusher from Auburn, who had announced earlier this week his plans to enter the transfer portal. Again, he was a five-star recruit in last year's class from North Carolina. There was a belief that maybe he was going to go back home and play for Bill Belichick. Maybe that was something that had piqued his interest, but it was announced last night that he has declared that he is going to stay at Auburn. So Auburn was able to, whatever his demands were, I suppose they were able to up their offer a little bit or find some common ground there in their negotiations, and ultimately they were able to keep him from transferring out of the program. So that's really big news there for Auburn, because that was a very big piece of their recruiting class last year, and a guy that, as we saw, a lot of their younger defensive players got a good run this year, and he's certainly a guy that was going to factor in moving forward. So that's very good news there for Auburn, getting to keep Amaris Williams out of the transfer portal. And then, of course, don't know how you could have missed it, because it seemed like it was what everyone was talking about yesterday. But if you did miss it, we also found out that Jalen Mbakwe, the former five-star defensive back from Clay Chalkville, he had announced that he was planning to enter the transfer portal. It was a very weird situation. I know y'all probably talked about it a lot yesterday, Molly, but just a quick recap. You had rumors that Jalen Mbakwe was going to transfer, and he had a 7-figure offer on the table from a mystery school. Turned out pretty quickly that appeared to be Ole Miss as the school that was targeting him out of the transfer portal. Well, he wasn't in the transfer portal. They had, done what happens in college football and in college sports nowadays. I know a lot of people are upset about, it's tampering. Do we not think that Alabama's tampered with players out of the portal before as well? Just like every,
you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it any better myself. But yeah, so you have that whole situation start to transpire, and then it looks like he's going to be gone. And then so Ryan Williams makes a post on social media, and it was funny because Pat, I think everyone sees the post and it starts circulating on social media, and Pat texted me and said, essentially, all right, youngin, explain this caption to me. And I'm like, I don't even know what it means.
Wasn't it like bingo or something?
Yeah, it was a bingo. We got action.
That's what it was.
So, everyone's speculating, okay, well, this either means that, Alabama has made an offer to retain Mbakwe, or it means that, I guess the pessimistic side of your brain may be said, oh, so does this mean that maybe is Ryan Williams going to
Gonna
leave
leave with
because him
them,
and
yeah.
Mbakwe are such good friends and they do the podcast, and he was such a big part of Ryan Williams recommitting to Alabama, and so everyone starts kind of panicking and not understanding what's going to happen. Well, lo and behold, Jalen Mbakwe meets with the coaching staff yesterday.
Mhm.
They get something figured out. I would assume in the financial department.
Yep.
And that ultimately is what keeps him there on campus. And then, of course, you had the Ole Miss staffer who then tweeted out yesterday morning the bingo comment that Ryan Williams had made. And so it's like, oh, so now maybe we're going back from, all right, he was leading Ole Miss, then he was back to Alabama, now he's back to Ole Miss maybe, but ultimately stays at Alabama. And it was a kid that, I think for a lot of people that one just signified or that one was maybe a tougher pill to swallow because it was a kid that seemed like he really loved Alabama. And one of the things, you talk about in today's day and age is, how many kids are actually loyal to a university as opposed to, how much money they're being given by that school.
Mhm.
And, we've heard a bunch of coaches talk about how it's not about relationships anymore. It's about, what can you offer them
Yeah.
financially or, what incentives can you throw in there to make them happy. And so to see a kid that seemingly was all about this one school, he again, as we talked about, does a podcast with the school, all these different things to ingrain himself there, and was such a big part of recruiting last year's class and getting guys to commit, and of course Ryan Williams, and then to see him go because he gets a little bit more money somewhere else. I think that just kind of soured a lot of people on the
Mhm.
idea of the transfer portal, but this is happening to everybody. And this is something that, we've talked about with both Alabama and Auburn of,
Yeah.
you can feel great about a lot of these guys and, they can talk all about how much they love Alabama. They love Auburn. They love being part of that family and that community. But, everyone has a price at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
that's unfortunately just the world that we live in. But at least in these two situations with Amaris Williams at Auburn and Jalen Mbakwe at Alabama, both of those guys deciding to stay home. So yesterday, Molly, I know when you were doing three-man front,
Mhm.
what was kind of the, you know, I guess what was kind of the feeling?
The
Because it
mood
definitely
around it.
felt like it just felt like that was maybe the lowest, particularly from the Alabama fan base side of things, that maybe they had been in a while, and you started to see people that were maybe spiraling and going, oh no, is this
Mhm.
going to be like when Nick Saban left and we're about to just see, a free for all basically of guys in the portal?
I would say spiraling would be the right term, especially from the Alabama fans that we heard from yesterday. I mean, we even talked to Mike Rodak about it. Like, it's one thing because this is the new reality of college football. Guys are going to leave the program every year, but at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, you have to counteract that by bringing guys in from the portal. And I feel like we haven't really seen any of that from Alabama yet. And again, that was what we talked to Mike Rodak about. But Damien and I touched on it a lot yesterday when and I know Alabama fans are glad he's back because he's Clay Chalkville's very own. He's from
Mm-hmm.
Pinson, but he's a freshman, and like I said, we talked about it yesterday. Put yourself in a 19-year-old's position. If you were 19 and you were a highly touted athlete, and someone offered you 6 or 7 figures, you would consider it. I know I would.
Oh yeah.
I don't care where it is. I mean, that's money that I can't fathom now, but
Mm-hmm.
especially as an 18, 19-year-old. So I don't think you can really blame him for at least being interested if it was Ole Miss. And it's funny too, because on three-man front, we had a caller yesterday, kind of post about it on his Instagram story. I think his name was Trey. And he posted something about like, oh, we'll miss you. And he tagged Jalen Mbakwe and he responded to it.
Mm.
And we looked at it like he posted all the receipts on his Instagram story, and Mbakwe was responding to him. This was about, I think the news came out around 2:30. It was right after we went off air that he was staying at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And this was around like 1:30 maybe, or 12:45 when he called. And they were just talking back and forth, and how Jalen Mbakwe was saying it was a coaching decision, and that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of why he was looking elsewhere. Um, he said it was like a business decision, obviously. He said nothing about Ole Miss, or I think he said like it wasn't Ole Miss, like nothing about Lane or anything like that, which I mean, we know a little bit more information now, but again, my thing is I don't think you can really blame him for seeing a seven-figure offer and at least considering it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all let's be honest, you can be selfish when it's a player on your team and you get, you don't want them to leave.
Right.
And it's easy for you to look at and go, oh, it's just greed. But yes, I mean, the reality of it is for 99% of us, especially if you're in a situation where maybe you didn't get the playing time that you wanted and somebody comes and knocks on your door and says, hey,
You can start
we're going to
here.
give you a guarantee. And I'm not saying, I don't know if that's what was offered or not, but,
Right.
hypothetically, somebody can come and say, hey, you want to be a day one starter. And, oh, by the way, one of the things that we found out through this whole process was, maybe part of the reason that he was considering it in the portal was that Mbakwe wanted to essentially be the next Travis Hunter, and he wants
Mhm.
to start getting snaps on the offensive side of the ball. And I would assume that's something that he talked to with the coaching staff, and they came to some sort of agreement of a way that they can get him involved on offense. And yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, and somebody says, yeah, we'll let you do that, and we're gonna pay you,
A lot of
double or
money.
25% more or whatever, more than you're making now. How many of you, if somebody, if one of your competitors in whatever industry you work in said, hey, I want you to come do the job, you're doing a great job where you are.
Mhm.
How about you come here, we give you a promotion and we double your salary? How many people are going to say no to that? Not
Not
very many.
not many.
Not very many. So that's just, it's the reality of it. It kind of sucks. We still have to get used to it. I know it's still new to a lot of people, and but this is just the reality of it in the world. But for at least a day, the transfer portal was beaten by the sure love that these kids have for Alabama and Auburn, and a little bit of money on the side, I'm sure, played a role as well. But to get to the rest of the transfer portal news for Alabama and Auburn yesterday, you did, of course, Auburn getting another offensive tackle, Mason Murphy from USC. So really nice job there by Hugh Freeze and that staff. Now you kind of got bookend tackles, you would hope, between Murphy and Xavier Chaplin, the kid from Virginia Tech that came in through the portal earlier in the week. So that was certainly an area I think we all knew Auburn needed to bolster their offensive line. So very good job there from Auburn and that coaching staff to get that done there in the portal. On the Alabama side of things, this was a guy we had talked about late last week, but Kelby Collins, the Florida Gators edge rusher. He was a former 4-star recruit from Gardendale. Actually, he's a local kid that had gone down to Florida. He was an all SEC freshman team in 2023. Didn't get as much run of it this year, but a guy that has a lot of talent. And he's now transferring into Alabama. That was announced yesterday. So some reinforcements there up front defensively for the Crimson Tide. So you like to see that if you're an Alabama fan. We also had offensive lineman Cam Dewberry. He's a transfer from Texas A&M. He was on campus in Tuscaloosa yesterday taking a visit there. You also have, as we now know, KC Concepcion, the wide receiver we've talked about from NC State. We've talked about him a lot as it involves Alabama. So he's visited Alabama already. Things seem to go well with his visit there. He's also gone on a visit to Colorado. We now know he's also going to visit A&M in Miami. So still, that's continuing to go on there with him. I've heard good things about Isaiah Horton, the receiver from Miami, who a couple of days ago it looked like was getting an early trend towards Alabama once he hit the portal. So things seem to be going well there. And then we found out that Dylan Lonergan, the transfer quarterback, he will not be going to Georgia. It was reported that he was going to be visiting Georgia this week, but that is ultimately not where he lands. He is going to Boston College. And so you would assume that he will be QB1 for BC next year. He is reunited with Bill O'Brien, who recruited him to
right.
Alabama when he was the offensive coordinator there. And he now joins Eli Holstein as a pair of former Alabama quarterbacks that I would expect to be starting in the ACC next year. So good news for him. Wish him all of the best moving forward. And just another a big name here, Alabama and Auburn. Haven't heard either of them necessarily being in the mix here, but I was a little surprised. And this is one of the bigger names I think to hit the portal. But you had Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver from USC, who didn't have the kind of season that I think a lot of us were expecting. USC just didn't have the kind of season that I think they were expecting to have, and a lot of people were expecting them to have. But if you remember 2 years ago when Caleb Williams was there, this was one of the most electric kids in the country as a true freshman, kick returner, wide receiver. He is a athletic freak, and he is he's going to make somebody very happy. He is a guy that I don't know if Alabama and Auburn are going to kick the tires on him, but he's certainly one of the more talented players that we've seen go in the portal this cycle so far. But we already know that Florida, Oklahoma, and Georgia here in the SEC are all teams connected to him already, potentially trying to get him out of the transfer portal. So, a lot of big stuff going on in the transfer portal. It is the gift that truly keeps on giving here this time of year in the world of college football. But of course, keep it locked here to JOX 94.5, and we will keep you updated on everything transfer portal all year round here in the SEC. But when we come back, we've got to recap what we saw last night. Molly mentioned it earlier, but a really interesting bowl game you had going on last night. Auburn on the hardwood, a potential injury there that could have some Auburn fans feeling a certain type of way this morning. So we'll give you the latest on all of that. So keep it locked here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. We'll recap what we saw last night when we return. 6:20 here on your Wednesday morning. Welcome into Morning JOX. Conrad and Molly with you this morning until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. And then Molly and I will be right back here from 10 until 2 o'clock alongside our friend Landrum Roberts for a little three-man
It's like our
front.
what? There's a little pause there.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the right way to describe Landrum. It's hard. There's a lot of words that come to mind. He's a special guy.
He is.
But yeah, so we look forward to that, and then of course the Paul Feinbaum show coming up as well at 2 o'clock. Gonna get to some things that happened last night, but first, some interesting news that came out of the world of college football. It doesn't have to do with Alabama or Auburn or the transfer portal, so you can actually just enjoy this for just a little tidbit of college football news.
That's a first.
I know, especially this time of year, but it does involve a coaching change and a very interesting one at that, as it was announced yesterday that Norfolk State has hired Michael Vick, the former Atlanta Falcons quarterback and Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, I guess, to be their next head coach. So a very cool, just another in the former, I guess, for people our age, especially like people that you grew up watching and kind of idolizing at certain times, and especially people here and what?
At certain times.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. But especially people here, you know, growing up, there's a lot of Falcons fans around here. I know a lot of people that love Michael Vick and, of course, what he was able to do at Virginia Tech. So I was, yeah, very cool to see that.
Does he have coaching experience?
Not that I'm aware of. I was trying to find that. Maybe he's done some high school stuff or something like that, but I haven't seen nothing in the college or professional ranks or anything like that. I mean, of course, he's been an analyst for some time now. So, but that's exciting news now. And the campus of Norfolk State is just 20 minutes away from his hometown of Newport, Virginia. So that's very cool for Michael Vick to go back home and take over a program that hasn't had the greatest track record. They've only made the FCS playoffs one time, and that was back in 2011. So he's got a bit of a challenge. They went 4-8 this year, but very cool news there to see Michael Vick named the new head coach at Norfolk State. So just another former star player getting his opportunity in the coaching ranks. And I will say this, I think we all know about Michael Vick's past and something that he did that he paid the consequences for and was absolutely disgusting. But, you know, when I'm watching the bowl game last night and, you know, they have the ticker at the bottom of the screen and it announcing, you know, Michael Vick going to Norfolk State, you know, it goes through and makes the announcement. And then the next thing it says is career cut short by dogfighting ring incident or something, you know, something along those lines. And it's like, okay, I get it. Like, it's something bad that he did. We all know it's something bad that he did. I'm not saying we should forget about it, but like, this dude just got a head coaching job. It's nothing about any of his accolades from his playing career. It was just straight to his playing career was cut short because of the dogfighting thing. And it's like, come on, man. Like, he just got a job and this is what we're sharing. Like, I feel like in the football world, for a football coach, it might be more pertinent to share all of the wonderful accomplishments that he had on the football field. But to each their own. If you want to throw that in there too, whatever. But I was just kind of like, really? That's what we're going to follow the announcement with? Not anything about, you know, his actual football production or anything like that, but to each their own. So congrats to Michael Vick, though. That's a cool opportunity there at Norfolk State. All right, let's get to some action that we had last night. We'll start on the plains of Auburn, where the Auburn Tigers took on Georgia State in basketball last night, and business as usual for the Auburn Tigers. They knock off the Georgia State Panthers 100-59. But the big takeaway, I think, for a lot of Auburn fans, unfortunately, was you had Janai Broome, who goes down early in that game. We now know, according to Bruce Pearl, that it was a dislocated shoulder. According to Bruce Pearl, it essentially popped out of place and popped right back into place. So I guess that's good news as far as that's concerned. But yeah, he's going to be further evaluated today. Looks like they're just going to kind of take it day to day with him for right now, but obviously hopeful that he will be back soon, because you do have that big game against Purdue right around the corner if you're Auburn. But other than the Janai Broome injury, I think you have to feel pretty good about what you got from the Tigers last night. Chaney Johnson absolutely exploded last night off the bench. He played 30 minutes off the bench, 12 of 14 from the floor, 26 points to go with 8 rebounds and 4 assists. He was an absolute monster last night. I mean, one of the dunks he had on a fast break in the second half of that game last night. I mean, he was just like a bat out of hell, and he was, you could just tell he was playing with his hair on fire
He
last
was.
night for Auburn. He was absolutely he was exceptional. You had Chad Baker Mazzara throwing in 19. Not a great day shooting from the floor, but from the charity stripe, 11 of 11 for Chad Baker Mazzara. You will absolutely take that. And not a good night shooting from deep for Auburn, unless your name is Denver Jones, who went 5 for 7. But on the night, Auburn just 9 of 25, so 36%. Not terrible. You can certainly live with that. And how about Auburn? I know going into the game last night, maybe it changed a little bit, but I know going into the game last night, Auburn was the best 3-point shooting team in the SEC. They had the most, or were averaging, I believe, 10.5 3-pointers made per game, which was tops in the SEC. So that's certainly where you want things to be headed based on, some of the problems you had in that department last year. That seems to be cleared up for Auburn. But yeah, just another strong showing for the Auburn Tigers as they protect home court there at Neville Arena and knock off Georgia State 100-59. And of course, that sets up the big game coming up on Saturday when you take on Purdue here in Birmingham at 3:30. I'm sure a lot of you going to be in attendance there. Should be a big time, but congrats to Auburn and Bruce Pearl, another big win, and hopefully Janai Broome able to go on Saturday and, just give him a couple days off, rest up that shoulder, and he'll be good to go.
But didn't the same thing happen last year to his shoulder?
I believe you're right, yes,
Yeah.
or a similar injury, something like that.
Something like that.
So, but he's obviously a big piece of what they do there at Auburn, and hopefully he is going to be okay. We did also have the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl last night. Absolutely one of the elite bowls. I mean, come on. If you didn't have this one on your must-watch bucket list, I don't know what to tell you.
Have you ever had Scooter's Coffee?
I have not. Is it good? I mean, I'm assuming it's good.
So I was actually telling Pat this, and he was like, of course. Scooters is actually a Nebraska brand. It started in Omaha, and I had never had it until I went to college in Nebraska because they're like Starbucks, basically. They are all over the place.
Okay.
But Huntsville just got one, I think 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, not that long ago. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, there's a Scooters now in Alabama. How about that? Because like I said, the first place I'd ever seen them was Nebraska. But no, this was, like you said, the end of the game was very drunk.
Yes, it was definitely interesting. And I'll be honest, I mean, I don't think anybody would really blame you that much if you, kind of checked out of this one fairly early on, because it was 17-0 Memphis at one point, early in the second quarter. Things just weren't going very well for West Virginia all around. Memphis, especially defensively, was just causing a lot of problems there for the Mountaineers. But things changed pretty quickly after that. So you had so Memphis goes up 17-0. It's then 28-17 at halftime, and you're kind of sitting there going, okay, maybe West Virginia is going to have an opportunity to make this thing interesting. Maybe they're not. Then you come out in the second half. Memphis goes and scores. It's 35-17. It's like, okay, this thing's probably over. Well, then they score. West Virginia scores twice in about a 10-minute span there, late in the third quarter and then the first part of the fourth quarter. So now you're sitting there at a one-possession game. It's 35-30. Memphis goes down and scores on a goal line run. It's 42-30. They're back up double digits. Things are getting kind of crazy. You feel like West Virginia, okay, you've got a little bit of hope. You've got some momentum going at your side. You're able to go down the field, and get a score, make it a one-score game late in that one. Then you have Memphis, who goes down. They have an opportunity to kick a field goal, make it an 8-point game. So then you have to feel pretty good if you're Memphis, right? It would be 45-2, or you would have an 8-point lead at that point. It'd be 45-37. Worst case scenario, West Virginia goes down the field, scores, gets the 2-point conversion. You're going to overtime, right? You can't lose in regulation. You feel good if you're Memphis, but you miss the field goal. And so West Virginia has an opportunity to go down the field and potentially win this football game. And what happens? Interception. Well, and not a normal interception.
No. He threw a pick, and then I think it was like Elijah Herring on Memphis. He fumbled it. West Virginia recovered it. But then the referees ruled that he was down, I think.
Yes. So heartbreak for West Virginia. That's exactly how it happened. Is you're looking at it and you're going, okay, yeah, it's just a heartbreak to, excitement, because that's there's very few things I think that in football, because you just don't see that often where you get a turnover and then on a return, they then turn it over and the original team gets to keep possession. And then you're like, okay, that was a disaster, but we got the ball. We still got a chance. And then, yeah, for the, like you said, the officials to rule him down. And then it ends up just being a normal intercept, I guess, kind of a normal interception, a bizarre play. But that ultimately sealed the deal for Memphis. But I mean, West Virginia, I mean, hey,
They did.
they,
Yeah.
they showed their fight. And one of my favorite parts of the broadcast was, they had Rich Rodriguez up there in the booth doing an interview for a little bit because, of course, he is the new head coach there at West Virginia again. And, it was a fourth down situation. It was 4th and 1, and they're kind of sitting there and they're, the announcers are going, oh, yeah, 4th and 1, I would go for you. You got to go for it here. And, and then Rich Rod is, they're kind of trying to get him like, I know you're not the coach,
Come on,
but like,
coach.
what would you do in
Yeah.
this situation? He's like, oh, well, of course we would, we'd be going for it on 4th down. And he was kind of criticizing at one point. He was like, well, we wouldn't have gone in the huddle like they did. He was kind of talking through like how he would have had that situation run. And then West Virginia just gets stuffed on a 4th and 1. And they're just kind of sitting there like, oh, well, it didn't really matter
Awkward.
anyways because Memphis just absolutely stuffed them on a 4th and 1. But it's just little moments like that you get in bowl season with, filling time, doing some of these interviews that you get in the middle of the games. But it was certainly an entertaining for a Tuesday night bowl game. It was, if you stayed and watched the whole thing again, like you got entertained for 60 minutes.
And I have the replay of the last 17 seconds that we were just talking about. And if the rest of bowl season goes anything like what we had last night, I think we're in for a real treat. Because especially the entire second half, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is it's that time of year. You have more bowls coming up this week. Of course, the college football playoff is coming up for us here on Friday, but you are going to have bowl action really going on now up until the new year, all throughout the week. So I know that's something that we're all looking forward to. I know
you're
Molly,
looking forward to the ReliaQuest Bowl.
I was about to say, yeah, the ReliaQuest Bowl. I know Molly's looking forward to the Pinstripe Bowl. But you are going to have, let's see, on Thursday, you're going to have Georgia Southern. No bowl games tonight, but on Thursday, you're going to have Georgia Southern, Sam Houston. Then on Friday, if you're not watching the college football playoff or before the college football playoff, you're going to have Ohio and JSU going on there early, 11 a.m. kick on Friday. You're going to have Tulane in Florida. That's an interesting game there.
I like that matchup.
Yeah, that's a fun little 2:30 midday Friday bowl game there. And then, of course, Indiana, Notre Dame on Friday night. And then the college football playoff continues on Saturday. So a lot of good football coming up here. But we see you on the phone line, see you on the text lines, 205-834-9450. That'll get you on the courtesy GMC text line, 1-800-239-9569. That'll get you on the Buyers Right hotline. Would love to hear from you, your thoughts on maybe what you saw in the bowl game last night. Janai Broome, his injury at Alabama, some basketball coming up for the Crimson Tide tonight as well. And then, of course, the transfer portal. Whatever you want to talk about, this is your place. We will take your calls, read your text when we return right here on Morning JOX. You're listening to JOX 94.5. 6:37. Welcome back into Morning JOX here on your Wednesday morning. Nice and warm by this year's time of year standards here.
It was like 70 yesterday.
Oh, I know. It was great.
Yeah, I loved
It was
it.
almost 60 degrees this morning, waking up, coming up here early to do the show. So it's a nice day outside. Hopefully everyone maybe getting a little wet later on in the day, but it certainly feels good outside, and I will take that this time of year. Well, we're just going to start, I guess, doing Atlanta Falcons adjacent updates here every time we come back because last segment told you about Michael Vick becoming the new head coach there at Norfolk State, and now we'll just go to a current Atlanta Falcons quarterback, well, QB2 at least, as it was announced yesterday, if you missed the news, that Kirk Cousins will be benched in Atlanta. He will not be the Falcons starting quarterback this week. That will be Michael Penix Jr., who was taken with the 8th overall pick in last year's draft. If you were listening, or even if you were there in person with us at Trim Tab when we were doing our NFL draft party, that was the big surprise, as we're doing the show. And, we kind of had a general idea of where a lot of these players were going to go, or at least the guys that were going to go in the top 10. And I remember when Michael Penix was announced as the pick for the Atlanta Falcons, this was, again, remember, after they had already signed Kirk Cousins to that big contract. And we were
$180 million.
Yes. And we were all kind of taken aback by that decision, but maybe it's going to pay dividends for you now. I think it was maybe more of an injury insurance than a poor performance insurance when you're paying a guy that much. But yeah, Kirk Cousins, 1 touchdown pass, 9 interceptions in his last 5 games. So it was time for a change there. And we'll see.
But I say I think they're what, 1-4 in their last 5?
Yeah, they did get the win over the Raiders on
did.
Monday night, but it was a very ugly game. And
I mean, it's the Raiders.
Yeah, So maybe some optimism there for all of you Falcons fans out there, as Michael Penix Jr. is going to get his first start of his NFL career coming up this weekend there for the Atlanta Falcons. All right, to the courtesy GMC text line, we will go. First, we have, let's see, somebody texting in saying that they do not like NIL. They say, I feel like the NIL crap is ruining college sports. I'm not sure I will even watch college sports anymore due to there being zero loyalty to the schools. And I think that is one of the things that hurts people the most, is just there are very few examples, I guess, of kids that truly seem to just want to be at one specific place. And, I remember going back a couple weeks, I can't remember if we played the audio on 3-Man Front or not, but, you had Eli Drinkwitz doing an interview, and they were kind of asking him about Luther Burden and what his NIL process was like. And, Drinkwitz shared that essentially Luther Burden just told him, hey, coach, I want to be here. I trust you. You've done right by me my whole career. So whatever you think I'm worth, you just pay me that much, and I'm good. I'm happy here. And you do not get things like that very often.
No,
and so when you
not.
do hear about players like that, I know Tyler Booker, and some of the comments he made after Nick Saban retired about how I can't be bought, and that's the kind of stuff that really gets a fan base fired up. And unfortunately, where you used to have maybe a good majority of your locker room felt that way. Now, you're probably lucky if you have 3 or 4 kids in your locker room that feel that way.
Well, I kind of miss, I guess, the old days of what NIL was supposed to be used for. Like, I remember when they first announced it, like when you were first able to use your name, image, and likeness. And one of the first things that I saw, at least here in Alabama, was Bo Nix doing a deal with like Milo Sweet Tea. Or like you have some athlete doing like a car commercial, even like the Dr. Pepper commercials. But now,
yeah, you were thinking more local stuff. Yeah.
And maybe like on a national scale, if you already got like a Quinn Ewers, a Carson Beck, whatever. But now you're basically just paying players.
Yeah, it's pay for play.
That's all it is. It's pay for play.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. But yeah, no, I think you're right. As it started off as, you had,
it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I was about to say, you had, DeColdis Crawford and his air conditioning deal, like stuff like that, where you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then,
you don't have
like you said, you knew there were going to be the guys that had, like the private jet deals and things like that. But yeah, now essentially where it's all right, and just some of the demands that you see people making, of whether it's, seeing people making demands for how much playing time they're going to get, or, hey, I'm going to be the one that decides if I don't feel like playing this week and I don't want to risk an injury, then I'm not going to play. And, hey, I need you to, my mom needs a car, my dad needs a car, my aunt needs a car, like all these different things. And it's just like, okay, man, like great, you had 12 receptions last year,
Right.
and that the reality of it is, if that's what you can ask for and get it, then go for
Good
it.
for
And a lot of
you.
people are getting it, so until that stops, a lot of this stuff probably isn't going to change. I don't think. Somebody else texting in: do you think all the receivers leaving Alabama is because of the uncertainty with Jalen Milroe and the style of offense that they are trying to run? I mean, I think with the guys that you saw leave, I'll be honest, I think Caleb Odom is a guy that expected to have a bigger role. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have used him more at times. But he was a guy, if you are on social media, you saw some of the comments he made throughout the year. And he's a really talented player. But again, like I just, is that the kind of attitude that you want in your locker room where it's a guy that is more about why am I not getting what I deserve as a
Right.
true fresh, and that's the other thing is, again, that's just kind of the nature of the beast with guys getting more playing time early on because you want to get a return on your investment. You want these guys to see that they have a role and stay there. But like you're a true freshman, man. You got other guys ahead of you and
Mhm.
you're complaining about the play. It's just stuff like that where, again, nice player, you'd probably like to keep him. But he simply seemed like he just wanted more playing
More
time and
playing
probably
time.
more money.
Mhm.
I think Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice, it was a matter of, okay, they had a role on the offense. It just wasn't a very big role. And
Mhm.
with Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard both coming back, we assume. I mean, you had two receivers this year, and those were kind of the only two guys that got the ball. And
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd expect that to change moving forward. So I think it's just they can go somewhere else and get more playing
Get more
time, and
mhm.
Alabama can go and maybe save some money and bring in guys that fit more what Kalen DeBoer likes to see out of his wide receivers. I think that's a lot of it. So I don't think it has to do with Jalen Milroe necessarily. Let's see. Okay, somebody comparing the Michael Vick hiring to the hiring of Trent Dilfer, saying they hope it goes better than that one. Let's see. Chelsea. Someone texts in and says there's a Scooter's Coffee in Chelsea.
Oh, I didn't know
Yep.
that.
Okay. There's a yep. We have a
Okay.
few people texting that in actually. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'll have to
Yeah, I
go
did not know that.
check that out. And then somebody clarifying about the bowl game and the officials ruling the guy down when he had the interception and then the fumble. The officials ruled that he was going to slide when he fumbled the ball, and
Right.
it's when you start initiating the slide is when you're down,
When you're
not
down.
when you're actually sliding. So that kind of clears that up. There's also one, oh, okay. There's a Scooters in Coleman as well. Thank you, Stephen,
I did not know that either.
for letting it know. Let's see. Somebody texting in says, "Good morning, guys. If you haven't watched Carry On, the new movie on Netflix, it's a great movie. You should watch it." Okay.
Noted.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Um, let's see. Somebody texting in says, "When do you think Deuce Knight gets his first start at Auburn if he doesn't leave?" I would say 2026. That should probably be your hope, right? If you're an
I
Auburn
mean, I
fan,
would think so.
if you're paying a lot of money for Jackson Arnold, and you'd probably, I would think, I would think that you would
It-
have Jackson Arnold come in. If he's great for a year, then you have a good situation moving forward and you have a decision to make.
Right.
But I would not think you would see Deuce Knight start a game this year unless that either means that,
We have another situation from Oklahoma.
yeah, development has not gone very
Right.
well, or there's been a serious injury, and either one of those are probably worst case scenarios there. So I would think Deuce Knight is probably going to be your 2026 guy, and I would think you will see him this year in mop-up duty. They're probably going to want to get him on the field, but I do not think you'll see him start a game. So keep those texts coming in. We'll keep reading those here while we wrap up the show. But I want to go to the phone lines really quick here. Let's go to Zach. He's been waiting for a while. Zach, how we doing this morning?
Yes, good morning. How are y'all? So I just have two thoughts about Alabama. Just the first one's kind of about basketball. Just with they just got through the non-conference, probably the toughest non-conference schedule I've seen in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And they only lost two games, and really the only bad game was, I don't even think it was bad, was Purdue, and
Yeah.
they kind of got blown out there late, but it was on the road. It was close for most of the game. Like, what are kind of your thoughts about the tough stretch we went through, and just like what were your thoughts about Alabama? And then also with Alabama's DB room, I'm seeing a lot about Damani Jackson will most likely be coming back. So I kind of just thought Mbakwe is leaving because he's going to be the same thing as last year. He's the next guy up in case someone gets hurt. And, like, where do you think Mbakwe kind of fits in that DB room this year?
Yeah, appreciate the call, Zach. Good to hear from you this morning. Well, first off, so on Mbakwe, I think part of that was, so when Devontae Smith hit the transfer portal, him playing the Husky position, that is something that, Deshaun Jones played that last year when Devontae Smith was hurt. We saw Red Morgan play there as well. Jalen Mbakwe was also somebody that got a look at that spot later in the season. So I think maybe that's a spot where you see him factor in as potentially getting more reps. I think also, you would certainly like to be more than two deep at cornerback in terms of guys you feel good about. I think Xavier Brown and Damani, if they're both back next year, clearly are going to be the front runners to hold down those spots. But having a guy like Mbakwe to be able to go out and just the way that, the offense is run where you have five guys in the secondary, essentially you're kind of running with five somewhat DBs, with Kane Womack's system. It certainly helps to have more of those guys there. And as we know, he now wants to be a factor on offense as well. And maybe that's part of him coming back is they have a plan for him there as well. And then on the basketball front, Zach, yeah, Alabama 5-2 in that stretch. And like you said, the Oregon game hurt because you felt like you should have had that one. And that's a very good team in Oregon there. Yeah, the Purdue game got away from you a little bit, but again, losing to a top 10, top 15 team on the road early in the year isn't anything to complain about, but they got to get better shooting the three ball. That is something that has not been a strength of Alabama this year, and they've shown at times that they can be pretty locked down on the defensive side of things, but they also have times where they kind of get exposed a little bit. So I think it's a lot just, guys kind of gelling together, losing Wrightsell, having to get Chris Youngblood back from injury and get some of these guys going. But it's definitely been a good start of the year for Alabama and certainly Auburn, who, again, I think Auburn's played like the best team in the country. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And Alabama is not that far behind them. But Larry, Don, we see you on hold. We'll get to your calls and continue to read your text here when we return and wrap things up here on Morning Jocks. Welcome back into Morning JOX. Few more minutes here. Conrad and Molly with you. About to hand you off to McElroy and Kublick in the morning, but we got to get back to the phone lines here real quick and go talk to our buddy Don Don, who wants to talk a little bit about Janai Broom. How you doing this morning, Don Don? You recovered from the Christmas party yet?
Well, first of all, Conrad, that meant the world for me for you to come by for a little while, buddy. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, we appreciate everything you do for us, Don Don, and appreciate you putting that together yesterday. It was a good time.
We had a good time, and everybody ended up staying until about 3:30 or 4, so we had a good time.
All right, well, that's good. That's good. So what you want to talk about Janai Broom and his shoulder?
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure if y'all saw it because y'all were probably watching the football game, but he got hurt the first 2 to 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And when it happened, he just ran straight to the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew it was bad and everything. But Molly and y'all brought up a good point. He did the same thing last year. And what Pearl said last night after the game is that his shoulder popped out and then they popped it back in. But I don't think he's going to play Saturday against Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, it just kind of depends, I guess, on what they're, when they evaluate him, what the long-term risks are, because you certainly don't want him to get hurt and have it be something that comes back in March and has him out tournament time. So, yeah, I mean, you'd love to have him against Purdue, but I think, yeah, if it needs to be done, you'll kind of sacrifice this game and let him be healthy long-term.
Well, I tell you what, the rest of the team stepped up, didn't they? Because, like you said, Katie Johnson from Thompson had a career night, and the bench scored. I don't know if you know this or not, Conrad and Molly, but the bench scored 50 points last night.
Yeah, they were excellent, and over half of that came from Cheney Johnson. So appreciate you calling in this morning, Don. Don, is a good win for Auburn last night on the hardwood. Hopefully, Janai Broom gonna have a good, quick recovery there with that shoulder. Let's go to Larry real quick. Larry wants to talk about transfer portal. What's going on, Larry? You got about 45 seconds.
Guys, enjoy the show always. Number one question, does the transfer portal, every player that enters the portal, are they getting paid when they go somewhere else?
If they go somewhere else, yes, but a lot of them are not going to end up somewhere else.
But there's no guarantee they're getting paid even though they go to the portal.
Correct.
Number two, every player on the team in regards to the first string or the 85 players, are they all getting money from the collective?
Some amount, yes. Some a lot more than others, obviously.
Yeah, because I always heard Milrow got a nice big-time check annually.
Yeah, Milrow definitely makes a lot of money down there at NIL. Pays to be a quarterback in the SEC, but McElroy and Kublick in the morning, those guys are coming up next.